Welcome to the Modern Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Giordani. Special guest today, my buddy, Alex Bradley. Him and I, we met a year ago now, a little less than a year ago, wholesaler in the market. We got connected through Guillermo, actually.
I was wondering how we got connected, like if you
Yeah.
found me on Investor Lift or if it was somebody else.
No, remember it was Guillermo.
I remember that now.
Yeah, I had trouble moving a deal, and I think he's like, hey, you got to talk to my boy. And then we got connected, and then you and I have now been connected for a little while, done a few deals. Well, a few of them fell through, and then I've tried to do some deals together.
We've got one right now.
We do.
It's going.
Yeah,
it's moving.
Yeah.
So
welcome, buddy. I think we're gonna have a lot of good conversations today. Wholesaling, maybe talk a little bit about religious stuff.
Sure.
I think we'll add a lot of value to people who are trying to get into wholesaling or real estate or figure out their niche. So
cool. Yeah, dude, appreciate you having me on.
Of course,
I'm excited to chat with you.
So we were already just talking about a bunch of real estate stuff. So let's start about you getting started in real estate, because I think that would lead into some other cool stuff.
Sure. Do you want like the long story or the short story? Because
whichever we got.
I can go pretty long, man. My story started out with having a kid in college.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife and I, we're married now. We've been married for a year and a half. We started dating in high school. We moved to San Diego together, and we had been together for 4 years already. We were at the first semester of our junior year. We had just transferred to San Diego State, and she got knocked up. And so that kind of threw everything, all of we had a 10-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to finish college. We're both going to have good jobs. We'll, have an apartment. We'll save up for a couple years. We'll buy a house, like living the dream of the dual income, no kids life.
Right.
And, all of that just flipped upside down. So luckily we still graduated on time. Like her grandma moved down, helped us out. She would watch Emma, my daughter, while we were in school for our last year. She ended up being born 3 weeks before we started senior year. Okay. And so we graduated on time, which was nice. But then we graduated and we were looking at our options. Like, all right, childcare is going to cost like nearly what one of us would be making per year. So like, why pay somebody else to raise our kid that's 10 months old, when Caitlin, or one of us, ended up being Caitlin, could just stay home. So right out of college, I had a W-2 sales / like merchandising vendor job. And I was making like 50 grand a year. Plus I had a little bit of commission on top of that. I had a truck that, I used for personal use, company vehicle, free gas, insurance, and all that. So total back in 2017, I was making like 65 grand a year, which to support, myself, my wife, and our daughter in San Diego just wasn't enough. We were not getting by, or we were like barely just like scraping by paycheck to paycheck. If anything came up, like any kind of vet bill or like whatever, like we were going into debt.
Right.
So I had to figure out something, and we tried a bunch of different side hustles. We've always been entrepreneurial. We were like flipping mattresses at the swap meet in college and stuff like that. And after graduating, we tried affiliate marketing and blogging and Amazon FBA and a few other things, and nothing really stuck. And it was end of summer 2018. I started listening or following this blog called Side Hustle Nation, and I saw a post on wholesaling real estate, and he broke it down. You lock up these contracts, you mark it up a bit, you create the spread, and you don't have to like use your own money to like flip houses
or have risk, right? Yeah.
So wholesaling was definitely happening, but it wasn't mainstream like it is right now. So that was kind of my first like hearing about it. And at the time, I was too busy to take action. I had my full-time job. I was working at a restaurant part-time. I had a marketing internship. Like I literally worked 2 jobs Monday through Friday. I'd get to work at 6 a.m. And if I was working at the restaurant, I didn't get home till 11 p.m.
Right.
And so I spent the next few months just listening to Bigger Pockets like every single day and trying to like figure out and plan for a moment where I could take action. And at this time, Caitlin was pregnant again with our son, Elijah, and he was due to be born in December of 2018. And so I was planning to use my paternity leave as like my moment. I was going to have 90 days, this 90-day window where I could do something different and like actually launch a side hustle.
Right.
And funny enough, after spending like 6 months or so, like learning about wholesaling, I thought it was going to be too hard. I wanted to do it, but I didn't think I could launch it in 90 days. And so I actually got a 1099 position selling advertisement in a magazine. Super random, but at the time I thought that would be my escape. I went to Denver.
Mhm.
I took this like in-person training to sell these advertisements and for this magazine. And then I came back and I was like, all right, I'll spend 90 days launching this 1099 sales job. I can quit my job working at the restaurant and like W-2 sales job I had. And then 1099 sales would give me the freedom to wholesale on the side. That was
Mhm.
the plan. Um, well, like 3 days into like trying to sell advertising, I was like cold calling. I had a couple in-person
Mhm.
appointments. I remember I met with this guy downtown. It was like a restaurant downtown. I was trying to sell him on advertising, and he started asking me questions like, all right, well, how can I track my KPIs and all that? Like right now we can run Facebook ads. We know exactly who's looking at it, how many clicks we're getting, what the conversion rate is, like what's the conversion rate for the magazine. And I was like, you got a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I realized like, I don't even believe what I'm selling in.
Right.
This can't be worse than wholesaling. And so we decided like, now or never, like we have to try wholesaling. And so I got a list of pre-foreclosures from a local title company. I had no CRM. I literally printed out 2 landscape pages because it had like columns of
Right.
phone
Yeah.
numbers. It
Yeah.
was skip trace. And me and my wife would just sit in the kitchen and cold call this list and try to get appointments. And so my son was a couple of weeks old. Our daughter was 2.5 ish almost. And she would be in daycare part time for like 3 hours a day.
Mhm.
I think it was Monday through Friday. And so while she was gone, we would cold call. And then we would also go do door knocking.
Mm.
So it was like our first week of trying to do this. I remember my son was 3 weeks old. We went to this house and by San Diego State, door knocked, nobody answered. And then we were getting ready to go to the next place, but my wife needed to feed our son before we went, so he wouldn't scream in the car the whole way.
Right. Right.
And while she's doing that, I'm in the driver's seat and I'm on my phone with that list and I'm
Mhm.
cold calling and I'm leaving voicemails left and right. And this guy ends up calling me back like the next day, and he lives in Chula Vista. He says his house is in pre-foreclosure and he has a rental property in San Antonio that he wanted to sell
Mhm.
so that he could save his Chula Vista house.
Mhm.
And so, he asked, "Hey, do you buy in San Antonio?" And I'm like, "Of course I do."
Yeah.
And so, long story short, I met with him. I wasn't sure if I could sell it. And so I wanted to try and find a buyer before I locked it up.
Mhm.
I went on Bigger Pockets. I DM'd every single person that said they were a buy and hold investor in San Antonio. I met this guy. He went over to the property and walked it while I was meeting with the homeowner. So I
Mhm.
got it under contract, like on the spot while he was walking it. He was giving us feedback and he
Mhm.
knew I was trying to lock this thing up. So he told me where I needed to be to
Mhm.
lock it up. So I got it locked up and we had a 3 week or 30-day close. Like a week into it, we find out that house is also in pre foreclosure.
Shit.
And in Texas, it moves a lot faster. And
Right.
so the auction date was like the next week.
Mhm.
And so we had to expedite closing and everything like that. It was, long story short, it was a really stressful 3 weeks. But after that 3 weeks, I made 7 grand.
Right.
And it was like 3 weeks from the first conversation with this guy to closing. I got really lucky because this guy called me back in my first week of like trying to wholesale, which doesn't happen.
No.
Most people, it takes 6 months to get your first deal.
Mhm.
So I got really, really lucky. If that wouldn't have happened, I don't know if I would have been able to stick through it, if I got past my 90 days. But we got lucky. And, that $7,000 today is like a pretty small assignment fee. But back then, for me, that was the most money
That
I'd
was
ever had.
2019, right?
That was
2018.
2019,
Yeah.
January
Yeah.
2019.
That's a
So
lot of money.
biggest deal, biggest paycheck I ever had,
Right.
most money I ever had in my account, life changing. And so that first year, I did like 4 deals just on the side. I went back to work. Second year, same thing. I was just on the side, still working at the restaurant, still working for my full-time W-2 job. So I did 4 deals first year, 4 deals the second year. At the end of 2020, I decided to quit my full-time job and go full-time into wholesaling real estate.
Mhm.
And 2021, this was my first full year
Mhm.
as a full-time wholesaler, and I completely failed. I did 1 deal,
No way.
made 15 grand, and ended up burning through like my savings that year. And so that was a tough year, very humbling. When I quit my job, I was like, I'm never getting a W-2 job again. I'm self-employed, I'm a business owner, like never going back, right?
Did you You didn't go work for a company?
No,
Okay. You
no,
did just 100% solo.
100%
Okay,
solo.
cool.
So like, and when I was doing it on the side, I was doing Facebook ads. I was
Mhm,
getting inbound leads, and I had a VA that would like follow up and
mhm,
stuff like that. And so acquisitions wasn't too bad. It was inbound leads for the
mhm.
most part, or referrals.
Sure.
And in 2020, like Facebook changed a little bit and my Facebook ads like weren't working anymore. So I had
Mhm,
to pivot. And so I went from inbound to cold calling was what I decided I was going to do.
mhm,
And I think I like started with an agency and that wasn't working out. And then I hired my own cold caller and I actually went through like 5 cold
mhm,
callers because they weren't showing up
mhm.
and was like trying to train on my own. That wasn't working. And so I was like, all right, I got to cold call myself. And I got an office in PB. I was like subleasing with a buddy. Thankfully, it ended up like, excuse me. Thankfully, I was locked into a lease for a year.
Mhm.
I would have been so screwed if I ended up having to stay there the whole year. But he had a falling out with the owner, and we got out of the lease after like 3 or 4 months. And so I got to walk away from that.
Right.
Thank God, because I could not afford to be there.
Right.
And I would go to the office every day and I would just sit in front of my computer and just stare at the dialer. And I just couldn't
Make
make the
calls.
cold calls. Like I'd do a couple calls and I would like someone would cuss me out and I would just like be in my head for the rest of the day. And so that was super stressful. That was basically what made me realize like I hate acquisitions. I thought I hated wholesaling. I thought I just couldn't do it. And so I ended up like burning through our savings. That summer, I went back to working in a restaurant. I just needed like some cash to pay the
Mhm.
bills. So serving tables again. And the previous summer, my wife had got her real estate license and she was doing really good. She's on a team, she was getting inbound Zillow leads and she was crushing it. And I was like, all right, I can do that.
Mhm.
And the plan was to get my license and build up the savings again and relaunch a wholesaling company some
Mhm.
way, somehow.
Right.
That was the plan. And I was taking classes, working at the restaurant, and then at the end of 2021, I had finished my classes and I was just waiting to take my state test. They were super
Mhm.
backed up, and
Right.
I was scheduled for like January, February. I had an opportunity to go to work for another wholesaling company. This guy that I met through a mastermind that I did, and he needed a dispo guy, and so that was like intriguing to me. I was like, I can give that a shot. And so he hired me on 1099 sales. Took me like a month to get my first deal. But that first year with them, like, was really, really good. Made
Right.
100K. We did like 1.5 million in assignment fees.
That's awesome.
I think even a little bit more than that. And it was just like a husband and wife couple
Mhm.
and myself doing dispo. The husband would lock up the deals. I would dispo them. His wife was like our TC basically.
Nice.
So that was when I realized, like, all right, I don't hate wholesaling. I hate acquisitions. Like, I
Right.
love dispo. I love like it's B2B.
Mhm.
In acquisitions, if someone needs to wholesale their house, they have drama in their life.
Right.
And I don't want to be somebody's therapist.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to deal with all of their emotions and just the drama that comes with acquisitions. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even realize that, I don't think, like when I had failed in 2021
Mhm.
it wasn't until I found the part that I really liked that I was like, "Oh, this is why." Like, this
Mhm.
is B2B. There's no emotions. It's like,
Right.
do these numbers work for you? If not, if it does, fantastic. If not, I'll keep sending you more deals.
100%.
And then on top of that, 2021 was a fantastic year to be wholesaling.
100%.
All of our deals were selling like 30, 40, 50K over asking, like our average assignment fee was pretty fat. And um if you were a flipper, if you bought something in January and held on to it for 3 months, even if you bought a bad deal, you were making money on
Yeah,
that
for
deal.
sure.
It ended up flipping at the end of the 2021.
Right.
But as a wholesaler for us, like it was really good.
And how many deals on average were you dispoing per month when you
We
were with
did
them?
40 that first year that I was with them.
40 total?
Not per month, but
Oh,
for
yeah,
the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
year.
Okay. That's still a decent amount. What was your average assignment fee?
Like 30.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
What were the main channels that they used back then?
When I first started with them, it was a lot of cold calling, texting, and direct mail.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like the market it's constantly evolving and shifting. I feel like cold calling and texting was massive for a long time. And then what I've realized, well, now with all these new rules and regulations, I'm sure you've heard about it, like
Yep.
texting, there's people with $1 million lawsuits now who are doing like that are getting sued for doing texting and calling.
Scary.
So now you have to run them through DNC and then at least show that you're doing that. So if you do get hit, that you can prove that you actually did something before versus just doing a mass text, which is crazy. I still get text messages to this day, and I'm just like, these people are like asking for it because people, and I know people in Vegas who are getting $1 million lawsuits from texting right
Dude,
now.
there's Facebook groups dedicated to like teaching people how to sue mass texters.
Yeah,
Like,
it's crazy.
yeah, there's literally like you can take a course on like how to do that. It's wild.
It's crazy.
So that's what affected us too. Like we transitioned to like PPC
Yep.
that second year. So like probably end of 2021, early 22
Yep.
is when we started doing a lot more inbound marketing.
So were you there for a year and then you went off on your own after that again?
I was there for a little bit over a year.
Cool.
I left in April
Okay.
of last year.
Nice.
And I went back on my own, and just so many things changed with the business model. They were trying to scale. It went from like just me and the husband and wife couple to they were hiring a bunch of acquisition people. And when I first started, we were locking up like 3 to 5 contracts a week.
Mm-hmm.
It was much more like quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we switched to PPC and had all these acquisition people, it was like 3 to 5 a day. And I was the only dispo person. And it was super frustrating for me because the owner would say, you know, just lock it up. Like for almost any deal, if there was a seller that gave you a price and they would sign a contract, he would lock it up and then we'd try to dispo it.
Right.
And the acquisition guy would be like, this doesn't really fit the formula. It's not really ideal. You know, most likely not going to sell this one. And they'd be like, well, you know, we have this system to use dispo, like just see what we can do on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they wouldn't sell. And then they get mad at me
Right.
because they wouldn't sell. And so there was just a lot of tension like the last 6 months that I was there. Like I was making less money. I was working 10 times harder,
Right.
trying to sell 50 deals at one time, and none of them were selling.
Right.
So that just kind of got to a breaking point in April last year. And so I had to move on, and it ended up being like the best thing that I've ever done. I went from just being exclusive their dispo guy to now I do dispo. I'm doing the exact same thing, but you know, for you, for other wholesalers, other flippers, real estate agents, and not just here. You know, I'm like nationwide. So,
Which I love. I feel like your business model is something that I feel like I was talking to someone yesterday, a guy who's become I've really close to and a mentor. He used to do 150 flips a year. He's retired now, just leverages out his money. He calls me yesterday and he's like asking my opinion about everything. And we were talking about the difference between like wholesalers and flippers. Flippers are glorified people who have a construction business. They're not marketers or acquisitions people, right? And I think people forget the in between. I don't know what my point behind this was. What did you say before that? I totally forgot my point.
I was just saying how I went from like being exclusive dispo for one company to, you know, dispo for anybody and everybody.
That's where I was
now.
going to go with it. With like flippers who need to dispo their deals, they're not marketing companies, right? Or sales companies. They
Yeah.
don't know how to push it out enough
Yeah.
to get enough eyes on it. And I think where your model is extremely smart. And I see a lot of big gurus trying to dabble into this now, especially with Investor Lift and things like that, or the nationwide model, I think can make a lot of sense for a lot of people. Because like even for my business, right? I can take exactly what we're doing with our exact sales process, exactly our marketing spend, exactly what we're doing, and I can take it to another market.
Yeah.
And mimic the exact same thing, get the exact same results.
Right. Because you're
And
over
then-
the phone with all
right.
your acquisitions.
And then have someone like you who has Investor Lift or has access to these other areas do it. And I'm fine splitting it as long as it makes sense in terms of an ROI perspective. So I think it's genius, like how your model's set up.
Yeah, one of my favorite like clients like to wholesale a deal for is flippers because they've got a ton of inbound leads, especially guys that have been around for a while. They're, you know, just getting people that are sending them deals and they can't buy all of them. And so they want to wholesale them. And a lot of times they just pass on it or they'll shop it around to their buddies in town. And a lot of these guys, you know, when we first have a conversation, they think that they know everybody. They know all the flippers because they've been flipping forever and they know all the big guys in town. But there's so many more mom and pop buyers out there that like aren't going to all the local events and like,
Right.
you know, they're just under the radar. And so I found that I can reach those buyers and be able to market these deals and wholesale these deals that they shopped around to their buddies and either they didn't want it or, they make something on it. But if they go with me and one of my buyers, like they can make more. And
Right.
so that's been like my favorite type of investor, like JV partner to
For
work
sure.
with lately.
What's your what was your biggest aha moment that you realized with the whole wholesaling stuff that got you from the point of like no deals to where you're at today? Because I know you had, was that your highest month that you had the other month when we were talking?
I think so. Wait, it like it was going to be like 70K in 1 month, and then
Hmm.
just like closings got delayed, and so some of them got pushed from February to March.
Hmm.
But like by far this year, like I'm like one deal away right now from making this year what I made last year.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, um, but February was huge
So
for sure.
it was a 6-figure month, right?
No, it was 70.
Oh,
It
okay.
was going to be 70, and then
Gotcha.
some got pushed to
Still,
March.
still a
So
big ass month,
yeah.
especially with no overhead. I'm thinking like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. My overhead's like $2,500 a month, so
right.
I'm averaging like 20K a month right now,
So that's crazy.
like net profit.
That's good, man.
So for me as a solo guy with one part-time VA, like I'm loving it. I want to figure out how to scale though.
Okay.
I don't want to be working in the business and be on the phones as much as I am, but I'm trying to find that balance between like scaling and keeping my overhead low. I love that, like, if I had to, I could go months without selling a deal.
Hmm.
Like what you do is terrifying to me right now. Like a 50K overhead, you have 2 bad months, which you don't have.
Mm-mm.
But, I've seen it happen to other companies where they're killing it. They start investing 20, 30, 40, 50K a month in marketing. And then all of a sudden they have a couple bad months and they're just like pulling their hair out. And I don't want to live that life.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out like, how can I scale this thing that I've got going on without putting myself in that position? I might just have to buy the bullet, but
I mean, it's definitely hiring, right? Like I think you get to a point where you can delegate because you're doing what someone else would just do for you. And it's being able to just hire someone in house and paying them a commission based on how your process is.
yeah,
But it's setting up like a system for that person that you bring on.
yeah,
And you already know how to do it. So it's easy. Just create a Word document of like everything you do in your day. And hey, this is a day in the life of a disabled person that works for you. And make sure you set it up. Hey, here's how to add more people to your buyers list. It's going to allow you to get more deals. They can also do flipper outreach for you, right? So to imagine, and this is the biggest takeaway that I had when I went from like, hey, I'm just like this solo dude getting deals by myself to like, hey, I'm growing a team and I'm gonna scale this. As soon as I made the first hire, I was like, holy shit, like this is what's going to take me from here to here. And then the second person, and then the third person, right? And all I'm doing is spending more money, but also the revenue is increasing because their productivity, because I'm only one person, right? And there's
yeah,
only so much that you can do. But for you to scale, paying someone, let's say a $3,500 a month salary and then commission based on your deals every month, and then them having the ability to reach out to more investors and more flippers and also bringing you more deals, it's huge. Because
yeah.
I bet you by hiring someone that you can do 2 extra deals a month just by them doing outreach to other investors.
I need like an acquisition person. I've started this kind of. So like I've been talking to a lot of other wholesalers, either, newbie wholesalers that are still trying to figure out like how to get in the game and get their first deal. And also like some seasoned like wholesalers that have been in the game for a little bit. Maybe they're where I was in 2021 where they know how to wholesale. They
Mhm.
know the ins and outs of a wholesale deal, a transaction, everything like that. But maybe they're beating their head against the wall at acquisitions, just like I was. And so I've been telling those guys, like, stop cold calling.
Mhm.
Like, if you are a newer wholesaler or you're right there, you can so easily like get burnt out and go broke if you're spending like thousands of dollars a month on buying data, skip tracing data, cold calling, and everything like that. And if you hate acquisitions or you suck at it, you're going to get burnt out and you're going to go broke
Mhm.
quick. And so I'm like, stop calling sellers, find other wholesalers for me. I'm trying to get them to do like acquisitions. Like, bring me another wholesaler with a deal that I can sell. If I sell it, I'll split the profit with you.
Right.
And so that's brought me some deals for sure. But I have a lot of wholesalers that are doing that and they they seem good. Like I talk to them, they sound professional, like they know what they're doing, but
Mhm.
they're still struggling to like bring in deals for themselves and,
Mhm.
and for us to do. And so I don't know. I that's my main role right now. Like I have a VA that like does most of the dispo, and once we have leads, I close them.
Mhm.
So I don't spend a lot of time really even on dispo anymore.
Mhm.
I've got the process built out for that. But the acquisitions and getting new wholesalers to work with and new flippers to wholesale their deals, like I want to grow that and scale that, but I'm having a hard time replacing myself to do it.
I mean, it's easy. I don't think JVing makes the most sense because imagine if you're JVing, let's say it's 2 deals a month and it's 40K pops and you're splitting 20/20,
Right.
where you can just hire someone at $3,500 a month that's good at acquisitions, that's good at reaching out to other investors, other flippers, other people who may have deals that can help you dispo. I think that's where the difference of your dollar will go a lot further. And I know it's overhead. So that's what's the scary part that
Yeah.
probably holds you back.
Yeah. Then I got to figure out like, do I get an office? Do I,
I,
like,
I was virtual up until recently.
okay, I'll
Yeah.
put them in your office.
There you
Yeah.
go. I know I've told you a million times. I was like, let's do something together. I'm totally down to do like some virtual setup. I mean, I feel like yeah, that's a whole nother topic. But it's funny, we were talking about acquisitions. What would be your like I feel like the market is so different now over the last few years where I think you can get away with doing without spending a lot of money to get deals. Where now don't feel like those people which is why I think it's harder to get deals
Yeah. I feel
for
like when
most people.
wholesaling first started, you really could, buy a list and get a deal pretty quickly just
Mhm.
off of having a cold caller. You could have a pretty low overhead. But now it seems like there's so many people in the game, especially in bigger markets like Southern California. You have to spend these, 20, 30, 40, 50 grand a month in marketing to bring in enough leads to be able to run a consistent operation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the problem too is I always see because people hit me up and they want advice and all this stuff, and I can tell them, hey, here's where you should allocate your money. At least in our market, like I know what's working for me. Here's where you can allocate your money. Here's where your spend is. You have to have consistent. I spend a little bit more on some things, a little less on others, just due to what works and what's not working as well, but still works. But there's going to be months. I can't give away all the secret sauce, but there's going to be months where like something will perform less than another, but you still have to have that in there, right?
Yeah.
To where you're a little diversified over the multiple channels of marketing. Um, but the thing is I think that people don't have the other stuff in place where their salespeople know how to talk to people on the phone or go on in-person appointments and know how to land contracts. I think that is where people fall. There's a lot of people who can spend a lot of money, right? A lot of big flipping companies that make a lot of revenue from doing flips. And they can very easily start up and say, "Hey, I'm going to start doing acquisitions on with my team." But who's running your sales processes? What does that look like? What are the conversations that you're having? Are you doing in-person appointments? How do your appointments look like? I think that is the secret sauce. And that is why I'm consistently doing deals every month is because our sales process is so dialed in. Like I can spend a lot, but if our sales process sucked, we wouldn't be getting deals.
Yeah, that's huge. That's
Absolutely.
exactly like what I had experienced last year,
Right.
where it's like we had all these deals, but they weren't deals. We had all this inbound leads and stuff like that. But the, I don't know, I feel like they invested a lot of time and money into tons of different sales programs. And they'd
Mhm.
spend weeks like studying and implementing like certain sales processes from big gurus and stuff like that. But I don't know what it was
Yeah.
that it really is hard. You can have everything, all the systems and processes and the leads, but if you can't close those well, then you're gonna struggle.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree. And I think it took me a long time. I was telling you little bit before we got on. I don't know why I'm trying to like tiptoe around some of the stuff that I do, but I'll share it. So like when we do our sales process, we have a two-part close and we're not doing in-person appointments. But over these two-part closes, I'm in the room or I have my headset on where I'm able to listen to the conversations that are going on. If I hear in the beginning conversations that they're non-committal, we are not doing the second call and we're waiting to do the second call and we're doing consistent follow-up after that. If they're committal during the first call or I get any signs of red flags or anything like that, if there's no red flag, excuse me, then the second call will be an offer call. And typically we're doing two call closes. So like our solid deals that are coming in from our profitable channels, we don't need multiple calls to close a deal. We need two calls and that's it. And most of the time, like there's no in-person appointments, there's nothing like that. Like we're getting the contracts over the phone, and you see, like I'm locking up deals every single week, like multiple deals,
Yeah. Good
and
deals too.
solid deals.
Yeah.
Yeah, where we're like solid deals.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Our revenue's huge. So, and we don't, and yes, I do spend 50K, but I'm getting 5 to 10x my ROI on all my spend right now. So even if I did have 2 months that were a little wonky, one of our deals, because the spreads are so huge, are still fine. And I think one of the things that I love about my model is that I'll still flip, right? I'm not just stuck in like
Yeah.
the wholesaling model, which right now I do like, um, unless it's a realtor deal. Like a realtor deal specifically, I will absolutely flip those. But like the wholesaling model for direct to seller stuff just makes sense because there's investors who are only willing to make 20K on a deal, where for me, I want to make 100 plus.
So question for you.
Yeah.
Are you still getting deals like just from referrals and relationships because you are also a flipper that you're able to wholesale? Like, if so, like how many of those are you doing?
So for the last 3 years, it was all referral based. So last year was my first 7-figure year, and it was almost 100%, 85% was all directly from realtors from 2023.
How many of those did you wholesale?
Very little, and I'm very transparent. If there's something that comes up on one of those deals, I'm like, hey man, this is like getting a little wonky. I don't love the way that, we had one last year where the HOA was a nightmare, and it was going to take us like 4 months more of holding time to hold on to it. It was still a good deal. It would just be a long time to wait. We had another buyer who was willing to, pay $100,000 more than we had under contract. So we did assign that one.
Nice.
And then we did a few direct sellers last year. And last year I had a partner. Like it wasn't like an official partnership, but I was JVing on all my deals with someone else who's a very big flipper in the area.
On the flips?
But he still wholesales too. But the majority of them he flips. So we flipped a lot together over the last 3 years, and he was more of like a mentor, but he never really dabbled much into the direct to seller stuff until I dove in head first. And then ultimately started my own operation, which has been kind of crazy, but yeah.
Good problems to have.
Yeah. Good problems. It's been fun. But lots of learning lessons. But that's what I was, my biggest advice to people is figure out a sales process that works. Like I don't think going in and spending 50K or 25K or a bunch of money on marketing or hire a bunch of acquisitions people, like you don't need all that. I think you can still get free deals through realtors or doing like cold calls. So my next hire right now, I'm giving way more stuff. I'm going to hire an acquisitions person strictly for realtors. So I want someone who's building relationships. It's going to be like a dispo hybrid role where I have someone who's going to the networking events, but also is very good on the phone, that can build relationships, get people to come on the podcast, that do a lot of deals, that work with probate attorneys, things like that, where we can leverage those relationships to do more flips. Because we are wholesale heavy right now, but that's just because all of our stuff is direct to seller right now.
That sounds like a lot of roles for one person. Like dispo alone is a full-time job.
Yeah, but I'm helping with dispo right now. I feel like because I'm wearing a lot of hats in the business because I want to be able, that's what I was telling you. Like I want to be able to train someone because I've effectively done it, right? Like I know the buy box for the buyers that I'm sending, at least on my list. Like I know that the deals that I have fit the criteria for the buyers that I'm sending out. So when I'm locking up my deals, I know what my margin's going to be because I know exactly what percentage that they're going to buy this deal at.
Yeah, you're locking those up with confidence.
With confidence,
for sure.
Yeah. Like I would lock them up without even sending them out. Even if I didn't love the house and I didn't want to flip it, I would be fine removing contingencies. I wouldn't do it, but like that's how confident I am in most cases. Yeah. I actually don't.
Well, you just did for Chula Vista.
True. But we had multiple offers. Yeah. But the one I have in Escondido right now, I'd absolutely, no question, would remove contingencies. So,
well, that's like the flex you have when you know you can close if you have to. You know what I mean? Like worst case scenario, you flip it and make 80K or something like that.
Right.
So
yeah. The business model though is just wholesaling is just interesting.
It sounds like, I was going to say, you're talking about like giving out all the secrets and everything like that. It sounds like it's almost time to launch the Josh G sales course.
It's funny because people are wanting to come to the office and stuff, and I was like, I'm just gonna put like a $10,000 stripe in my like an hour call for 10K. Just if someone pays it, then they're idiots. But
I've run into that too. And then also I've run into like pouring a lot of time and energy into somebody and then they don't do anything. That's almost worse.
it is almost worse. What's your what's your biggest what's your biggest tip for wholesalers?
Um, I mean, for me, I feel like I'm in such a like small niche that it's kind of hard to say. I would say that, like I said, I've been trying to help other wholesalers do what I do. You know,
Mhm.
it's so cool, like very, very low overhead. They really just have to be the middleman between like me and another wholesaler with the contract.
Mhm.
Like they bring me that and I bring the buyer and they just sit back and get paid. But I think it's been tough for a lot of people to build credibility and rapport and trust.
Mhm.
I'd say one of my number one tips is like over communicate. And that sounds so cheesy and like it's very broad on the surface, but I'll give you an example. People want feedback when you're dispoing their deal. And the worst thing you can do, in my opinion, is wait for that person to follow up with you and ask for the feedback. Like
Mhm.
one of my goals is always to like give someone the feedback before they ask for it, no matter what. If it's but especially if it's bad. Like
Mhm.
if someone's waiting to hear from you, like they think you have a buyer, they're waiting for that offer so that they can sell this deal through you. And, not only are like they having to hit you up to get that feedback, but then you're delivering bad news, like that leaves such a bad taste in their mouth.
It does.
And so I like, as soon as I get word from somebody about feedback on a property, I'm shooting a text to, whoever the contract holder is and letting them know exactly what the buyer is saying. If I reach out and I can't reach my buyer at the time, they're not answering my calls, I'm sending that person a text and saying, "Hey, I just hit up the buyer, I sent them a text, left them a voicemail. They haven't gotten back to me. I'll hit you up, as soon as they call me." That way they know like I'm doing something. I'm actively like working on this for them.
Mhm.
And that has helped me so much. Like there's been a lot of people that have sent me deals and they just like didn't work out. They ended up having to cancel because they couldn't find a buyer for it. I couldn't find a buyer for it. We got offers for it, but they was just like not enough spread. They had it locked up too high. And I used to be scared to like tell them like, "Hey, I don't have anybody for this." Like, maybe they wouldn't want to like use me to help them dispo anymore. But I think I've just provided a good enough service to where like I communicate so much with people that like it leaves a good taste in their mouth and like they want to come back. They know that like I'm putting in the work to sell this deal for them.
100%. And you do, like from my experience. I mean, we've done well, we had Borrego Springs, which was a nightmare. Which ended up closing, which is great. But yeah, you do a great job of doing that. But yeah, that's huge. I think that's huge. I think for any business though, for any sales, realtors, real estate in general, like over communicating is the one of the biggest keys.
Even if the deal goes well, like if you make 100K on something, but it was a nightmare the whole way through
Right.
because people weren't responding to you and letting you know what's going on, like you wouldn't want to work with that person again.
No, absolutely
So
not. Yeah.
I'd say if I had one piece of advice, it would
Mhm.
be that.
Yeah, for sure. You want to talk about religion?
We can,
Okay,
sure.
let's get into it.
Are you religious at all? Are you Christian? Like,
So I grew up Christian. And it's funny because you brought that up, and I've recently I said this like it wasn't really a joke though, but Whitney and I, my wife, we were talking about it the other day about believing or like getting back into. She's had a lot of tragedy. Her dad passed away like 2 weeks before we met suddenly. Her aunt just got hit a head-on collision and passed away 2 weeks or a month ago now.
wow.
A lot of like tragedy that's hit her. And I think like having something to turn to or believe in, or just having a higher power. I don't know. We believe in God and we both were raised as Christians, but we don't go to church and we don't have that part of our life. So recently I've gotten like targeted on TikTok stuff of like people speaking and church stuff and all of that. And we're both kind of torn of like going, but like we haven't made time. So yeah, that's what kind of what I wanted to
Okay.
hear your story.
Yeah, so I probably similar to you grew up in a Christian household. My parents were pretty casual Christians. Like we went to church on the weekends. I went to youth group in like elementary school and in high school. We said grace and stuff like that before dinner, but they weren't like always harping on God or like, pushing that down my throat or anything like that. Um, but so I believed in God, and it shaped a lot of like my just I feel like foundations for like morals and the way I
Pick up kids.
yeah, got that timer, got to make sure I don't forget.
Yeah, right.
And so it's a big part of like who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like I grew up being like scared to do bad things because I didn't want to go to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's the most positive way to teach your kids about God. I'm trying to switch that with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely like had a strong faith in God as a kid. And then when I went to college, a lot changed. I started taking some like philosophy classes, history classes, astronomy classes, and like all of a sudden this whole idea of like this dude in the sky that created the world like didn't make sense to me.
Right.
And so I totally stopped believing in God in 2012, 2013, and remained that way for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until the last year that I've like refound my faith in
Mm-hmm.
God. And um when I first started drifting away, like I just had so many questions, and I was trying to like talk to people. There'd be people on campus, there'd be people at the swap meet where I was slinging mattresses, like walking around, like trying to talk to people about Jesus. And I'd ask them questions and nobody could answer my questions. So it's like, all right, I just gave up
Mm-hmm.
after a while, and I didn't really think about it. And then, man, I want to say not last summer, but the summer before, I started thinking about religion again. And I've got two kids. My daughter is 7, my son is 5. And I started thinking about how much religion and Christianity shaped me as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I started like thinking about it logically, like, this book, the Bible, is 2,000 years old. There's so much wisdom in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you a really good foundation of like how to live life, how to be a good person. And there's just so many things that, like, if you follow that, whether you believe in God or not, like you'll live a pretty good life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I was like, man, I want to go back to church, like simply for the fact that like to have another source of influence on my kids, like outside of just me. They
Mm-hmm.
were both like in public school and preschool and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm losing grip. Like they have these other
Outside
outside
influences. Yeah.
influences that, I need to like have someone on my side. And so that was my first like reason for wanting to get back into it. Another thing kind of goes back to my story. Like when I graduated college and I had a kid, like I was lost for years because I didn't relate to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that was my age, like, they're still in school or they just graduated. They're going out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And like, I just wasn't doing that. And
Right.
then anybody that I started meeting with kids, like through my preschool and elementary school, like they're all 10 years ahead of me,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't relate to them either.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day that summer, 2 summers ago, I took the kids to the park, Liberty Station, down the street from where we live. And there was an event going on. There's a bunch of tents and jumpy houses and food. And all the kids were like, oh, what's going on over there? And so I was like, oh, let's go check it out. And we roll up, and it ended up being a church, and they invited us to come hang out with them. And we spent the day like hanging out at this event. And there was a bunch of other kids there and a bunch of parents that were my age. And I was like, yo, like, this is where they're hiding. Like
Right.
they're all at church,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know any of them because I don't go to church. And
Right.
so that was kind of an aha moment and another like level of like, all right, like maybe it'd be cool just to go to church and just to meet some people. But at this time I still have like zero faith in God. But logically it made sense to go back to church. And so I spent a few months trying to find a church and was hopping around that whole summer. I went to like so many different churches. My wife got burnt out because every Sunday I was just dragging her to a new church, trying to find someone that like it's hard. It's so
resonated
hard.
with,
Yeah. Like you can find a good pastor, but then like the music sucks, or you find like a good pastor, good music, but then you're just not like, vibing with the people that go there. It's really, really hard to find like your church. So, I finally got smart and I started just like watching YouTube sermons and like at least pre-vetting churches before going there.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a really great church in Point Loma that we go to now called Captivate. And during this process too, like I started praying, and I didn't really believe that anyone was listening to me. I didn't believe that God was there, but I prayed a lot as a kid. I knew how to pray. And so I would just start talking to God at night, telling him about my day. And that like felt pretty good. And then I realized that like it was helping me with like some of the stress and anxiety and like even like depression that I was feeling. I remember there was this one day that we were going to SeaWorld, and it was just me and the kids, and it was
Mm,
supposed to be a fun day.
mm,
And the whole morning leading up to it was just like a disaster. Like I was just being so overcritical on them and like micromanaging every little thing that they did, from putting their shoes on to getting dressed and grabbing their snacks, and just like I was just yelling at them too much. And that's something I've struggled with a lot.
mhm.
And I remember like rolling up to SeaWorld and being like, dude, like this sucks. Like this is supposed to be fun.
Right.
And I just sat there when I parked, and I just like said a quick prayer, and I was like, God, like give me the strength to just like be patient and like love these kids and like have a fun day. And as soon as I said that prayer, I just felt this like weight lifted off my shoulders. And I struggled for years, and I still struggle with just like getting in these moods where I'm like, hypercritical, and I'm just like mean for no reason. And I've done everything to like snap out of these moods, and nothing has ever worked. And that was the first time where like instantly, like I felt just this relief and was able to like get out of this bad mood and like enjoy, the moment. We ended up having a super sick day at SeaWorld. And that like was a huge shift for me. And it was a click. And at this time, still like I don't even believe that someone's listening to me. But I realized like, this is kind of a form of like meditation
I
or
was
affirmations. Like I've done a lot of like, personal growth, like reading, books about all that type of stuff. And I was
mhm,
like, you know what? Like whether God exists or not, I don't care.
mhm.
I like praying is helping me with my stress and anxiety. I go to church, and the sermon is like a free life coaching thing, for a an hour a week that I just get to go listen to. This guy talks about these stories that are relatable that I can apply to my life, that just like make me feel like I'm being a better husband, a better father, like a better person.
Mhm.
And so spent like a few months, like, going to church and just like getting all of these benefits from church, helping the kids learn about these things and like helping myself. And eventually I joined a Bible study, and we read through the book of John. And I started learning a lot more about like the life of Jesus. And like, I think organically, like my faith has resprouted and grown. And
Mhm.
like now I definitely like believe in God and everything like that. There's been so many things over the last year that like have happened that just couldn't be coincidence. Like it's
Right.
just like I feel like God was like putting stuff in front of me and saying things, like I'd be asking questions and praying about things, and like boom, something would happen.
It's crazy.
And it is crazy. It's super crazy. So that's been a huge part of my life lately, is just like this kind of journey of like rediscovering my faith in God, and like realizing that like it helps so much. Like if you have stress and anxiety, like there's this higher power. Like you don't have to depend on yourself to be strong. Like God can be strong for you, and you can ask for his strength. And like it,
It's
it
hard with like ego too, like with us as guys, like giving up and just saying, "Hey, someone else has the strength for us," if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
that could be a
it,
block for
yeah,
sure.
I think I'm saying that for myself. Today was one of those days where you're all this stuff that you're talking about, like anger and like today was one of those days where I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. All the emails, all the phone calls, all the
Yeah.
text messages that I got today, I was just like, man, I just need to like turn off my phone, not do anything today, go go and have like a complete day off, or turn, have one of those days where I just turn everything off. My therapist used to tell me just to go meditate, which sounds like it's almost like the same relief that you're getting. Cause when I would do that with meditation, it would help me a lot with stress and anxiety and things like that.
I think prayer is a form of meditation.
Yeah.
Like there's so many different ways to pray. For me, I just like will run through like, God, like this is everything that happened today, like, you know, got the kids ready, and I was being a jerk, and help me through that. Like help me be a better parent. Give me the strength to like be patient and like to lead by example, to live more like you. And I just talk to God about these things, and it's like also setting that affirmation in my mind, like this is the way that I want to live. And I still totally have days
Hmm.
like that, like you're speaking. Like I had a kind of rough morning this morning as
Hmm.
well. Like I got a 5-year-old boy, and he's so stubborn, and I struggle with that a lot. But now it doesn't take me a week to get out of that mood.
Right.
Like now I can catch myself and ask for help, and I'm able to turn things around a lot quicker, and then just also overall have less of those moments.
Yeah, I snap out of it pretty quick normally. It does, like, with days like this where I feel like I have to be on, sometimes it puts me off my game a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Or
totally.
I make less I stop doing conversation, like any of the calls that I had or follow-ups, I'll probably push to the next day, just because if I have to be a little bit more sensitive or like lean into emotion, I'm not going to be good at doing that today. So I just
Yeah.
know myself, so I'll wait
It's good that you can recognize that.
till the next day. Because it's hard. Like, we deal with a lot of emotional situations in our side of the field
Yeah.
where it's very sensitive. Like you're talking
That's why I
about,
don't do it.
Yeah, I know. And I have to deal with it where there's lawsuits and tenants and all this other bullshit. So like when I'm having days like today, I just know that, like, all right, I'm pushing it to the next day. But I do like the gym and meditation. I've tried my best to do that. And I know that Whitney and I have talked about going to church again. It's just been one of those things that's like I've been on a back burner that hasn't
Yeah.
happened. So I
It's
do.
hard.
Yeah, it is.
We go to church in person probably like 50% of the time. When I first got back into it, I was really trying to like be social and like meet people. And so I was going pretty much every week. But now I've got a pretty good like squad of like church people from this Bible study that I've been into. It's a bunch of guys our age, and we've like met their wives and stuff like that. And so now like half the time we'll just watch it from home. Like they just stream it on YouTube. So that's kind of nice. We can just like relax Sunday morning in the living room and
It's good, dude.
and watch it. So yeah, man, no excuses.
I know. Yeah, no excuses. Well, cool, man. Thanks for coming on. Any closing thoughts?
If you got deals out there that you need help dispoing,
Yeah,
hit
up
me
Alex.
hit me up. Would love to help you. If you're a newer wholesaler and you need some help, man, would love to help people kind of figure out how to get unstuck the way that I was. And yeah, man, just appreciate you having me on.
Of course,
cool
bro.
talking to you.
Appreciate you. Thanks for watching, everyone. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one.